Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Welcome to the Community IT Innovators Podcast. My name is Carolyn Woodard, and I am the Outreach Director for Community IT. And I am so happy to have my friend Matt Eshleman here with us today to ask him some questions about AI adoption. So Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Great. Thanks, Carolyn. It's good to be here talking with you. And as you mentioned, my name is Matthew Eshleman. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Community IT. I've been at Community IT and working with nonprofits and a range of technology solutions for quite a while. And it's always great to see the new technology solutions and innovations that have really impacted the IT space over the last 20 plus years. So it's a very different world than when I first joined Community IT.
Right. I mean, our company used to help offices where people were in an office and needed to have hardwired outlets for their PCs. So we've come quite a long way. There's always a lot of changes. But I wanted to have you on today because I know at Community IT, you are one of the AI enthusiasts. So artificial intelligence as a tool and an exciting new tool. And we've all heard that AI is really fantastic, and there are a lot of use cases that nonprofits are using. But I wanted to ask, are there downsides? And do you have clients, and are you hearing from nonprofits that are not as excited about AI?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. And as you rightly identified, I am a fan of technology and what the new technology solutions can enable us to do. I remember whenever first started at Community IT, the big questions were, do we need to have email addresses for everybody? This seems like kind of a distraction. And so I don't know if AI, is kind of going down that same road, right? It is relatively new, this new tool, and are we going to be able to use it productively? I think the AI technology adoption, and I think technology adoption in general just really has sped up. The pace of AI and new technology adoption is just kind of on a rocket, in terms of how quickly it gets out there. And, I think at this point, it really feels inevitable. It's impossible to avoid AI. One of the things that we do for our clients is provide lots of cybersecurity services, and we are, protecting them against malicious traffic on the web. And as part of that, we're, monitoring and blocking malicious sites. And through that, we get some insight into where clients are going. And we see right now that probably about 80% of organization staff are already going and using AI tools for their work, whether that's sanctioned or not. And so, I think AI is here, it's in our organizations. And I think even if, there's some reticence to adopt or engage with these tools, I think the reality is that, the staff at your organization are already using it. Even the tools that you're using already are incorporating AI elements into the service. And so, if we think of AI as like, oh, this thing that we need to go out and procure and build and provide insight into, that's not really the case. Those tools are already here. They're already in our organization.
Yeah, in the updates, they'll come out and say, oh, now you've got this AI part of a tool that you already used, and there'll be a little pop-up that'll say, here's, your tour of how to use this AI helper or something. It's funny that you mentioned youth, because I think there is a little bit of a generation gap. And I know I've told this story before, but I was at a conference where someone was saying quite authoritatively, oh, we just don't allow anyone at our organization to use any public AI. We've just, locked it down. And my reaction was like, are you never going to hire anyone in their 20s again? Because I guarantee, young people are very familiar and they're exploring and experimenting with what AI can do. And if you have a young person in your life, just ask them some of these really awesome and interesting ways that AI is being used for fun, for entertainment as well. And it also reminds me of when social media started. Nonprofits had all these debates over should you allow staff to be on Facebook during office time? Should your nonprofit have a Facebook page or presence? Should you be on LinkedIn? Should you be on Twitter or TikTok? And often it's the younger people who are like, of course you should be. That's where we're finding our information. So I think there are nonprofits that maybe as part of their mission, they have a reluctance to contribute to AI. I'm thinking particularly of maybe environmentally oriented nonprofits that are concerned about environmental changes and climate crisis and might have concerns about AI itself, just in general, using so many resources. So can you talk a little bit about if you are a nonprofit that wants to be cautious or wants to opt out for maybe ideological reasons or value alignment, how do you go about that? Like we just said, the tools are prompting you with these AI updates. Like, are there steps that you can take?
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting view. Like, is there anything you can do? I mean, I think, it's kind of like, the water we swim in, has AI infused, right? It's, the analogy I think that came to me, in learning about racism, right? So racism is just, it's part of our environment. It's in the water we swim in, and we need to figure out, how to acknowledge it. And we can't, like with racism, we can't say, well, it doesn't exist or I'm not going to be influenced by it, right? It's just AI is there. It's part of our environment and it's part of that water we swim in. And so, unless you're going to be incredibly disciplined about your users and your data, right, you're going to be intersecting with these solutions. And so, I think it's helpful to understand, right, as I talked about at the beginning, users, in the absence of guidance are already there and they're already interacting with these tools. And many tools themselves are operating on a principle where you need to explicitly opt out as opposed to opting in. And so, solutions like Slack, they've incorporated AI into their platform. And if you want to opt out, it's not just a checkbox. You actually have to go through, a process and email them, right? So they're making it difficult. And, we can share the link out here to Slack in terms of, their documentation and how they provide those instructions. And again, the same thing with Google Gemini. If you're in Google, that is a tool that is enabled by default in your Google Workspace environment. You can opt out. Zoom, right? Zoom is incorporating AI assistants into its platform, and you can opt out. And so, as persons that's managing technology in these solutions, understanding, right, kind of coming back to some of the fundamentals of what good IT management is, right? You need to know what platforms your organization is using, how your staff are interacting with them, and then really getting out ahead of being intentional about the use and adoption of AI tools in your organization. There's lots and lots of great AI frameworks that are out there in terms of how to adopt that. And so organizations really need to exercise that discipline and be proactive, because in the absence of making choices, all of these technology solutions are adding it in to the, just the mix and the product that you are already consuming.
The links to some of these resources will be in the transcript. And I want to put in a plug as well that we have an AI acceptable use policy template on our website that you could download and adopt for your own organization. And as you said, there are some AI use frameworks out there for nonprofits specifically to be intentional about it and to think through what you're using, why you're using, how you're using it, and then, as you said, the cybersecurity implications of using those tools. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, particularly, do you have advice on being intentional about what AI you use? So if it's a tool that you're already using and they're offering an AI upgrade bot helper, does that make you more insecure, or is it perfectly secure if you've already secured that tool?
Yeah. So I think one of the benefits of AI, at least is that it is maybe it's not a benefit, right? But because it is so expensive and because it requires so many resources, only really big companies are able to do it and execute. And those companies, I think, really are incented to at least um, have the public perception and I think the reality that they are protecting your data. So I think Microsoft, Google, um, Salesforce, right? So they are having really big campaigns and pushes to say you can trust us, and here's all the things that we're doing to safeguard your data and kind of protect it. So I do think for most organizations, turning on the AI voice transcription service to summarize meetings and provide action items like is a low risk and high benefit decision to make. Being able to use those productivity enhancements, which I think again is what most organizations in kind of the small and mid-sized space are using AI tools for. They are getting meetings of recordings, summarizing things, providing action items, automating a lot of the tedious things that either don't get done well or don't get done at all. And so I think for a lot of organizations, those productivity enhancements are really beneficial and worth engaging with AI. And I think I'm probably not qualified to provide answers in terms of some of the bigger picture existential questions in terms of okay, so we've got maybe all right, so we're beyond getting meeting summaries and having rewrites of our fundraising letter, and okay, now we're gonna uh, look for data analytics about our clients that we are serving, and that is providing information into an AI tool that may be surfaced somewhere else. Again, I think the scale is such that I think most organizations are going to fly under the radar of any substantive AI kind of data leakage risks. So I think big organizations, or organizations that are doing like massive research are probably at a much higher risk than than a small to mid-sized nonprofit doing work on their case management staff.
That makes sense. And probably those bigger organizations that have more budget to spend on a bigger research data lake are also going to have stronger cybersecurity protections around that. I'm wondering if you would help us make the distinction between what feels to me like those more internal tools. So it's Microsoft helping you with grammar, or it's Zoom helping transcribe, give you a transcription, versus more public tools. So would you say, I mean, we always say any platform can be used insecurely. Like if you give someone your password over Zoom, like you have now made it not a secure use of Zoom. But would you say in general, you would advise against nonprofit staff going to more public sites? Or like I was just saying for teens and 20-year-olds, like the more entertainment oriented AI uses from a work computer, would you discourage that?
Yeah, so I think making good choices about what and how you're using and adopting AI tools is important. And so I would say organizations, should probably be using their kind of quote unquote corporate AI solutions as opposed to going to the free or more open version. So again, for those that are Microsoft 365 customers, you already have access to, even without paying, to kind of a private version of ChatGPT. So again, the interactions that you have with the tool don't contribute back to the model, and so those queries are private. So again, it's kind of a use this, not that. So again, if you're a Microsoft 365 customer, use Copilot under the umbrella of your organizational account as opposed to going straight to ChatGPT. I think the same would apply for Google. Use it under your Google Workspace account, not the public Gemini. And so I think some choices like that can help provide some additional, integrity or protection around how organizations are interacting with those large AI solutions.
I know I'm hearing a lot from people who are AI enthusiasts. Some of the advice, if you're interested in it or just getting started, is to just go play around with it and just try it, and find how it can help you with your productivity. So it sounds like what you're saying is that someone at your organization might want to do a training on use this, not that, from your work laptop,
Mhm.
and kind of some of those issues that are involved, and just help people who may be not as tech savvy, to understand you can go within your own Microsoft environment and use these tools, rather than going out to the web and finding them that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that concept of a working group or a collaboration team that's really focused on using, adopting, sharing what they're learning is a great way to go about it. We have a Microsoft Copilot adoption guide, and that's one of the concepts that we talk about there is, I think Copilot's great. I think a lot of organizations would get a lot of benefit from it, but at the same time, you don't need to go and spend $360 to license everybody in your organization on day one. If you are going to opt into AI, be intentional about it, make those decisions, and get those 5 people or 10 people that are really excited, get them licenses, and then have them work together to kind of figure out what are our good use cases, how are we going to use this, what do we get the most value out of, what are things we need to be aware of, and so that you're being intentional about opting into those AI solutions and getting value out of it, as opposed to just kind of having it be the Wild West and people using kind of free tools that maybe don't have as tight of terms of service around the use of the data that's being put into it, than some of the more commercial corporate solutions, again, which really are incented to protect that data because they want to continue to retain and sell services back to you. And if it turns out that that data that you're feeding into the system is being used in other ways, I think that's really damaging to the trust, and that's going to be really hard for for these organizations to kind of reclaim trust.
Yeah, no, and there are already, that those larger tools and companies have a lot of tech journalists who are probing and trying to find out what they're using the data for. So that would come out more, it's more likely that it would come out with a larger organization and larger tool than a
Mhm.
smaller tool that you might just be playing around with. So
I have some thoughts on the overall, I think, concept of, is kind of this AI revolution an overwhelming good or negative? What are the things to be aware of? And I don't know if it's totally a perfect analogy, but I think, you know, AI adoption, I'm drawing a little bit of analogy between that and like phones for kids, right? So I think
Mhm.
it went from being like, hey, like phones for kids are great, gives you a way to stay in touch, like they can get connected with their community. There are these great tools that allow connection and um, community building. And now I think we're starting to see the swing the other way to be like, oh, well, maybe it isn't great that they have these devices that are just sapping their attention all day. And so
Are
schools are,
designed to be so addictive.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so So I think in the same way, I think I don't know. I haven't, talked about the Gartner hype cycle, but it's kind of like, hey, like we're seeing a little bit of the swing back into like, oh, well, maybe all this AI stuff isn't as fantastic, and having these big AI models, built on these large language models that just have basically scraped from Reddit, like maybe this isn't the way to build knowledge of our, that we want to generate solutions from. And so,
Yeah.
what's the reaction to that? So,
Or that it really just is such early days that
mhm,
we're all helping them improve their product, right? Like I do get the
mhm,
sense that eventually you'll be able to ask an AI bot something and get a reasonably good answer back, but we're not there yet. And it does kind of remind me of the early days of like Alexa and Siri, where you would just get, they
mhm,
wouldn't understand you. You wouldn't get, like if you got an answer, it wasn't at all what you had been asking for. And now it's so much better.
yeah.
But we
And
did
that,
that, right? We trained it to be
yeah.
better.
Well, I think another big takeaway is that technology improves and it's going to get better. And so, you know, use it, stick with it. I mean, I think the other analogy I have is right. I think in general, I'm still a fan of AI. I think AI tools are technology enablers, and and like the mechanical harvester, you know, like using technology that makes our work easier is a good thing. And the overall in the long run, like those efficiency improvements are going to drive adoption. Um and we're this is something that we're going to be living with. And so like unless you're ready to be Amish and kind of completely reject all modern technology, I think we have to find a way to live with the technology as opposed to kind of just rejecting it outright.
But I think it's worthwhile to acknowledge that change is hard, especially dramatic changes. It's funny you said the Amish because I was just watching a period drama set in the 40s, and one of the characters was walking through this barn and saying, just 10 years ago, this barn was full of Clydesdales because
Hmm.
all of the farming had to be done with horses. And it was really not even a generation. It was like within 4 or 5 years, everyone was using tractors. And
Hmm.
then what happened to all of the horses? And the character in this show was very wistful about, the horses, you don't need them anymore. And it was a huge change in a very
Hmm.
short time. And I think, there's a it's not bad to feel nostalgic about the way things were
Hmm.
while still saying, like this is a change. Like clearly there's an economic and information and technology reasons to make the change to use AI. So adapting as we go along, I think, and is useful.
Hmm.
Well, I think that's all just great advice. We will put a bunch of links in the transcript to this podcast and have some more information on our site. So thank you so much, Matt, for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and thanks for making us smarter about AI.
Great. Thanks, Kellen. Happy to be here.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.